In the late 16th century, Elizabeth Harrington sailed to the unknown lands of North America, leaving behind her life in London. She was young, full of dreams, and had recently married Thomas, a fearless explorer. Both were ready to start a new life in the Roanoke colony. The journey was long and exhausting, but upon arrival, the wild beauty of the place captivated Elizabeth. The vast fields, dense forests, and endless sea seemed to promise a prosperous life. However, something in the air whispered of mystery and uncertainty. The settlement of Roanoke was beginning to take shape. The cabins were rustic but cozy, and the crops were starting to be planted. Elizabeth and Thomas quickly settled, making friends among the colonists. Among them was Mary, a woman with deep, penetrating eyes. She seemed to harbor secrets, and although Elizabeth was initially friendly, she soon felt something unsettling in her presence. Thomas, however, seemed fascinated by Mary. He often spent hours talking with her, learning about the region's natives and their mysterious legends. This began to trouble Elizabeth. One night, after a long day of work in the colony, Elizabeth heard muffled laughter coming from the forest. Curious, she followed the sound, and hidden among the trees, she saw Thomas and Mary together. Their hearts beat as one, and their hands intertwined. Shock overwhelmed Elizabeth. Her world, which once seemed full of promise, crumbled. She felt the pain of betrayal pierce her heart like a sharp knife. In the days that followed, Elizabeth tried to confront Thomas, but he avoided her. Something was changing in him. His looks were distant, his words cold. The mystery of the word Croatoan, often discussed among the colonists, seemed linked to Mary. Elizabeth heard rumors that she possessed an ancient native amulet that could invoke hidden forces. Determined to uncover the truth, Elizabeth began to watch Mary's every move. One night, she followed her and saw her meeting a hooded figure near the coast. The sound of the sea in the background echoed like a dark omen. Elizabeth hid behind some rocks, watching the scene with keen eyes. Mary handed something to the hooded figure, an ancient map. Croatoan, she murmured, before disappearing into the darkness. Fear gripped Elizabeth. Returning to the colony, Elizabeth felt increasingly isolated. No one seemed to notice the changes taking place. Many of the colonists began to disappear without a trace. The bodies were never found, and each time someone vanished, a word was carved into the trees: Croatoan. A feeling of dread enveloped the colony. Elizabeth knew she needed to do something, but who would believe her? Even Thomas seemed enchanted by Mary, and the colony was on the brink of collapse. Determined to confront the unknown, Elizabeth sought out Mary. She found her near the sea, where she often performed strange rituals. "What have you done to Thomas? What are you doing to all of us?" Elizabeth asked, her voice trembling with rage and fear. Mary looked at her coldly, her eyes glowing in the moonlight. "You don't understand, Elizabeth. Croatoan is not a word. It's a place. Hey, calling. And everyone here will be taken." Elizabeth's heart raced. "Taken? Where? What have you done with them?" "They're gone, just as Thomas soon will be," Mary replied. "He has already made his choice." Anger consumed Elizabeth. She lunged at Mary, trying to rip the amulet from her neck. But before she could touch her, an invisible force threw her back. "You cannot stop me, Elizabeth," Mary whispered. "Croatoan has already claimed them." Desperate, Elizabeth ran into the forest, trying to find a way out, a solution. She needed to save Thomas, even if he had betrayed her. However, the more she ran, the more she got lost. The forest seemed alive, changing shape around her, guiding her toward the unknown. Exhausted, Elizabeth collapsed near an ancient circle of stones. The place pulsed with a mysterious energy, as if it had witnessed ancient secrets. Suddenly, a figure appeared before her. It was the hooded figure she had seen with Mary. He stared at her for a moment before revealing his face. "Thomas!" Elizabeth could hardly believe what she saw. Her husband was there, but something in his eyes had changed. They were empty, as if he was no longer the man she knew. "Elizabeth, you shouldn't be here," he whispered, his voice distant and cold. "What's happening, Thomas? What has Mary done to you?" Tears streamed down Elizabeth's face. Thomas approached her slowly. "Croatoan is our destiny. We've all been chosen." "No, this is madness. You can fight this." "Thomas," Elizabeth begged, grabbing his arm. He looked at her with sadness. "It's too late, Elizabeth. I've already made my choice." The sound of drums echoed through the forest. The trees seemed to close around them, as if they were trapping Elizabeth. "You need to leave before it's too late," Thomas murmured, stepping away. "I won't leave you," Elizabeth shouted, trying to follow him. But the darkness of the forest enveloped her, and she was lost from sight. For days, Elizabeth wandered aimlessly through the forest, trying to find a way out, trying to save Thomas. Finally, she reached a cliff overlooking the sea. There, carved into a tree, was the word Croatoan. Feeling that the end was near, Elizabeth fell to her knees, crying desperately. Thomas's fate and that of the colonists seemed sealed. However, something inside her refused to give up. Despite Thomas's betrayal, the love she felt for him pushed her to continue. In the depths of the darkness, Elizabeth heard a soft voice. "You still have a choice." She stood up, wiping away her tears. The word Croatoan might be a fate for some, but she would fight against it. With renewed determination, Elizabeth returned to the colony. But when she arrived, she found it deserted. There were no signs of the colonists. The cabins were empty, the fields abandoned. Only the wind blew between the trees. In the center of the colony, carved into one of the cabins, was the same word Croatoan. Elizabeth knew something terrible had happened, but she still believed she could save Thomas. She returned to the coast, hoping to find some trace, some clue, but the sea was calm, as if nothing had happened. On her last night in Roanoke, Elizabeth dreamed of Thomas. He was standing beside Mary, looking out at the horizon as if waiting for something. Upon waking, Elizabeth felt that her time was over. The colony was lost, and Thomas's fate sealed. With a broken heart, Elizabeth left Roanoke, carrying with her the mystery and pain of betrayal. No one ever knew what happened to the Roanoke colony, but Elizabeth knew that the name Croatoan marked not just the disappearance of a colony, but also the end of a love that succumbed to mystery